Hi everyone, this is Suzanne Wagner and welcome to the Intuitive Patterns for the month of March 2019. Well, it's March Madness. And sometimes I feel like we're the Mad Hatter, and in the ancient times the Hatter was called mad because to make the felt they had to use mercury, and so they kind of started to get a little crazy. Things are preparing to get a little crazy. The first piece is just that in March, on March 6th, Mercury goes retrograde in Pisces, which definitely will stir up emotions for people. Like, you really need more emotions stirred up at this point. On March 7th, Uranus goes into Taurus for the long haul, so it'll be there for 7 years, which is a huge deal because when outer planets change signs, especially the planet Uranus, it tends to be a little bit dramatic in how it goes about that. And we're going to go further into that today too. We're also kind of finishing up until March 6th, 7th. We're finishing up the Uranus in Aries. And Uranus in Aries is what has caused the Islamic Revolution, the nuclear incident in Japan with the earthquake and the tsunami, the changing of the guard of Kim Jong-un's father dying and the son taking over, all of the austerity measures that happened in Europe, especially with Greece. So Uranus in Aries was a lot about being kind of in an electrical firestorm. And so it fired everything up and everything was super intense. And Uranus going into Taurus should be a little more grounded. It should be a little bit more earthy. It should be a little bit more practical and down to earth. But you can expect some sort of revolution, revelation, and change in the areas that rule Taurus. And Taurus rules money, banking systems, the U.S. Treasury, the stock market, real estate. So what I've been telling people is just kind of like get super clean with all of your finances and get everything put together, really organized, and get yourself out of debt. Give yourself some wiggle room because we really don't know what this is exactly going to look like. But it could be pinchy. I'm really grateful that the U.S. economy is as strong as it is, but I think everybody is feeling that pinch, and I notice that pinch come in when I'm attempting to teach my workshops. So people don't seem to have that extra money, that little bit of extra money to kind of do some things. People are feeling a little bit congested and restricted already, a little bit more careful than they have been, and for good reason, based on what's happening in the world on a lot of levels. And so I totally support that. I don't want anybody to go hog wild related to the money. The other thing I kind of wanted to go into this month is some of the cards individually. And in the Osho Zen Tarot, there's a new vision card. And I think when outer planets change signs, such as Neptune, and also we've had a big shift with the North Node going out of Pisces and going into Aries. And Aries is the young, new, let's do it kind of sign. I think it's time for us to have a new vision of what we want for the world, what we want in our world, what is really important and what's not important. And the hard thing in life is that we get very comfortable in our habits and patterns. And as much as I like my little routines also and my little habits and patterns, if we've learned anything since 2008, when the Grand Cardinal Cross started and the world started kind of getting torn apart, is that change is sort of the name of the game right now. And, if you honestly look at yourself, you've changed a lot since 2008. You've grown a lot. You've shifted your parameters and your priorities a lot. And, but in that, and in the breakdown of the old structure, oftentimes what is difficult is to find that new vision. Like, what is that new vision? What do we really want our world to look like? And that seems to be that big question that people are coming up with again and again. Like, what kind of a world are we leaving our children? What can we be doing right now? And we've got the old guard that want to kind of pull us back into the old habits because of money. So you've got these people that are in control of the money, and they still want to make money in their old way, and they don't really want to go into this new vision. My husband is a solar engineer, and he designs these, 6,000 acre projects, right? And so he's done it all over the world. And it's always incredible to him and to me that solar has been around for over 35 years, and it is catching on, absolutely. But it's amazing how much resistance a good idea has against the old structures that are kind of locked in and rooted into place, and they won't give room for anything else. And so, how do we integrate that new vision? How do we make that new vision the top priority and master this kind of negative chaos that keeps coming at us from the old guard, from the old world, from the old rules, from the old structures? I think it's challenging, and I think that we have to have a vision that is inclusive rather than exclusive, and that seems to be pretty obvious too at the moment. In the cards also we have Badger. Badger is sort of this interesting balance between aggression and assertion. If you've ever put your hand in a badger hole, not that I have, but let's just say badgers are relentless. And the medicine card saying that we need badger says there's a lot of healing that has to happen right now in the world, and we have to be relentless. We have to be ruthless. We have to be aggressive. We have to be assertive. We have to really go for it on a lot of levels. Badger is a medicine totem for women, and so it tells me that it's the women that have to be really aggressive and assertive as we move forward. We also have butterfly, and butterfly is always about the stages, so there's the egg, and then there's the little larva, and then there's the caterpillar, and then there's the cocoon, and then there's the beautiful butterfly. So things are more beautiful the older they get, the more mature they get, and I think we're being asked to grow up. I think it's time for us to step past our childish narcissism, I want what I want when I want it, and to recognize that there's a bigger world and that we're a part of that bigger world, and we have to figure out how to create more beauty in the world. And I think that insects and butterflies are trying to tell us a lot about how our world is. Insects are dying, and on one level, maybe that's good for malaria, but on the other level, it's not good for birds and other things that survive off of the cycles of life that include insects. And butterflies are having a really tough time. So, again, how is it that these beautiful things that are in the world are being suppressed or ignored or not being paid attention to? We also have the frog this month, and frog is about calling in the rains. And I saw this card and I thought, oh God, all we need is more rain at this point. I mean, there's so much that's happening in the world related to hurricanes and storms and more rain, but I just am like, well, there's a warning with that probably in March we're going to have a lot of water, a lot of rain, a lot of storms, a lot of rivers, a lot of melting of snow. So again, kind of get ready and prepared for that. In the Mayan cards, we have the manifestation card, and I love this card because what do you want to manifest in the world? What is it that you're trying to move towards? And what kind of rhythm do you have with that? Like, is your rhythm stilted? Is it going like this? Or do you feel like you have a flow? I think it's really difficult right now to find flows and to figure out how to make flows happen. But noticing the rhythm and noticing if something is feeling smooth or organic, and trying to stay within the parameters of a flow, I think will help take the stress down that everybody seems to be feeling and the anxiety. So if you can get into your own rhythm, even if it's a new rhythm, find that place to kind of make it work. In the Aleister Crowley card, we have the Gain card. Now, the Gain card is an interesting card because it's about the natural coming and going and flowing of energy. And so it's that place where you're going to have to put out effort in order to get something back. And once you get it back, you're going to have to take what you got back and put it back into your business. So it's not like gain on a greedy level. It's gain. It's like, okay, I got that back. Now I have to put that back into my business, and I'm getting that back and put that back into my business, and you find this flow. There's a strength card. And I think right now we have to be very strong in hope, which is the star card. I think that we have to say everything that can heal this planet is completely doable. It's not hard. It's actually not hard. What we have to get past is this stuckness, this resistance, this selfishness, this rigidity of, I don't want to do it because it's new. I don't want to do it because I have to change. I have to change what I'm doing. I'm like, well, guess what? You're going to have to change. I mean, we're all going to have to change one way or the other. And, being also letting go of that disappointment, letting go of, okay, what if I was wrong, supporting a particular idea? And I'm like, well, then you're wrong. And you grow and you learn and you step through the dysfunction and you try and get this stuck, murky, swampy water of the indolence card finally moving again. It's important to kind of figure out how to get that moving. We have also in the words of truth, we had the cards healing, hatred, and feeling. And I'm like, well, that's about as self-explanatory as you can possibly get. This world needs to heal hatred. To heal hatred, you have to own that you're feeling it. You have to, recognize that, hatred is always trying to tear down peace, tear down your inner peace, tear down harmony. And it doesn't really serve anyone when we're doing that. So this is an interesting month where we're kind of balancing a lot of things. The astrology could get interesting. So again, with Uranus going into Taurus, like 6 weeks before, which I'm doing this video within that 6 weeks before, and 6 weeks after, you start to see the most transformation, or you tend to see how it is setting the stage in some way. So don't let yourself go insane with March Madness. Recognize that the North Node, is in a place that is making everyone feel emotionally intense and sort of exhausted. And recognize that, the goal is to understand what you feel and why. Don't worry. You have the whole year to kind of figure this out. Mercury is going retrograde again on March 5th in Pisces, and so expect media confusion and people getting super triggered and leaping to conclusions because they don't know what's real from what's not real. And that's always, it's tricky. I mean, I think it's really tricky right now. Jupiter is at home in Sagittarius, and Neptune is at home in Pisces, and Saturn is at home in Capricorn. It's kind of cool that all these planets are home where they want to be and kind of in their sort of happy place. But it's kind of also making everyone take a good hard look at themselves. Jupiter is always about faith and beliefs. And Neptune is always about illusions and sorting through the illusions and what's true and what's not true. So I expect there to be a hard look at spiritual people who think they're spiritual, people who pretend to be spiritual, including yourself, and kind of notice the numbers of people who, are kind of listening to someone's words, but their words and actions don't match. I think in March, we're going to begin to see a lot of spiritual leaders fall off their high horses. And I expect even more shocking illuminations along that same line in July. So Jupiter's, very bright light and powerfully strong gravitational pull is going to illuminate all those that are lost in Neptune's delusions and perceptual bubbles. And it's been really interesting to me to notice how incredibly attached people are to their illusions, even when everything around them is showing them that it is an illusion and that they have to let it go. It's almost like they will defend it to the death. And who this harms is themselves. Because everyone else sees beyond the illusion when you're doing it, but sometimes we're the only ones that can't see what we're doing. So kind of start to really take a good hard look at what is important to you. Now, Uranus is going into Aries for the next 7 years. Leaving Aries and going into Taurus for the next 7 years. Uranus is shifting signs, and it's kind of shedding its old astrological coat. While Uranus was in Aries, there was this obsession with the self, because, Aries is the sign of the child, and it's like me, 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 me. I'm right. I know what I'm doing. Da 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 da. What I believe is true. What you believe is not true. It's very self-indulgent and very narcissistic, and it has no discernment. It has no desire to have education or clarity. It promotes totalitarianism. And the insanity of monarchs for them to continue, which is pretty obvious in the world, like how many monarchs are actually super scary, dangerous people and actually not doing good things for their people, right? So Uranus leaving hopefully will start to create a shift in the balance of that kind of chaotic energy. Uranus going into Taurus for the long haul may make ownership, which is kind of a Taurus conception of land and property, different. I expect us to go through a fundamental change in perception, as it did 84 years ago, just before World War II, as to land and power and what we want. And so Uranus loves to blow things up. And in Taurus, it just wants to blow up money systems, stock markets, banks, and real estate. Perhaps it will make people live on less, and maybe smaller homes will become the norm. Perhaps it will let people find freedom in not having big mortgages over their head, while others may want security that is no longer afforded them because of the changes in the world. So one of the things that it can impact the real estate market in a huge way, actually has been, is that you've got a lot of kids that have huge student loan debts, and they've got hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan debt, and they can't afford a house. So these young people that would normally be buying new homes, aren't buying homes because they've got $200,000, $150,000, $100,000 in debt, so they don't qualify for loans, and that will impact the building and the real estate market for sure, especially as we continue with Uranus and Taurus. Now, Uranus doesn't do anything small. When Uranus moves, I expect a ruckus to begin in March and continue for quite a while. So, take yourself out of any financial burdens you can possibly do. Give yourself as much financial wiggle room as you possibly can handle. So, how do we deal with this rampant hatred that is spewing from the gutters of humanity's consciousness? I mean, I struggle with this every day. I get shocked at the meanness and the anger that is inspired by fear. So when I watch these people on television with their anger, it's like what I see is the fear underneath, the insecurity. That change creates a place of unknown, and there's no short and sweet answer to how we're going to do this. With the astrology sort of frozen in the winter signs, with Neptune in Pisces winter, Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn winter, it's going to take a long time for anything that is hurt to thaw and for honest conversations to happen. I wish it wouldn't, but yeah, we're more polarized than we've ever been. We're not less polarized. We're more polarized. And I know, based on history, because I'm like a little history buff, that things have to get a lot worse before people shift their perception or shift their parameters and have to admit where they're wrong in some way. And that's hard. It's really difficult for people. I lived in Berlin, Germany, and it was amazing to me how some of the older women that had survived World War II and, the horrible things that had happened to them. I mean, really terrible, terrible things. But, how many of them, would say, we really, really believed that we were going to win. We really, and I said, even in the face of starvation and everything falling apart and the bombing, and they were like, yeah, we really believed, that Hitler was going to save us. And I see that same thing happening in the United States, and it scares me to death because, I lived in Berlin and I saw it and I saw how it was and I saw the huge change in growth that Germany has done to address education and to help people learn how to navigate their own mind a little bit better. And I see that our educational system is really lacking and it's falling apart and it's collapsing, and we don't pay teachers enough money, and it's very hard and difficult to teach in certain places and areas. And so it doesn't allow for the maturity of the mind that is supposed to be a natural progress. And it's not been happening. So this month, the cards point to the fact that most people don't have roots. They don't have their own center. They have taken their center and connected it to someone else's ideas and beliefs, and not really from their own core truth. And when you move from another person's root center without your own, it makes you feel insecure and unsure. Your heart will tend to grab at things externally for security, but those things are really never secure. The integrative experiences of life allow you to feel connected and whole, but first you must know your own heart. And it is the power of that heart that allows you to belong and to know where your connections to this world come from. So I think in life, we all have to find this balance of our own inner archetypes. And we have a powerful part, such as an eagle, that exudes power and confidence. And in owning that power, you face the peril of aloneness. Because when you own your power and you step away from the herd mentality, you suddenly find yourself alone. And so the first door of consciousness in Buddhism is self-love. The second door of consciousness in Buddhism is aloneness. And that seems to be a big thing which is causing the separation that's happening in the world right now, that people don't want to stand in their own truth. They want to belong to a group or an idea or an archetype, and so that they feel stronger. Like, see, I'm part of this big group and I belong to this group. And I'm like, what about just what's true for you? You don't have to belong to a group. What's true for you? What makes your heart happy? What makes you a kind person? What makes you give to others in a confident way? So we also have inside of us like these archetypes that express our purest essence and our soul connection, sort of like a swan. And the swan embodies the gentle side of our nature, and it's your perfect self, that forever beautiful, unique thing inside of you that is always ever present inside your core. And so when you figure out how to combine power, which is like the eagle, and purity, which is like the swan, and you combine those, you create a mystical union and an alchemy that is new life, and that is the process of self-creation. The world right now is filled with reflections of self-proclaimed masters and leaders, but mastery is not about mastery over others. Fear, makes you have control over others, but that's not power. That's manipulation, and it's dangerous. And we've got a lot of it in the world. It's really about having mastery over oneself. When you can't control yourself, then you have absolutely no control over others. And so then what you have to do is, if you have no self-control, you basically control through manipulation, lies, fear, guilt, shame, threats, all these things. And people are extremely transparent if you really take a look at them. And so this month, I want you to take a look at yourself. Where do your actions, gestures, and words reflect your enlightened self or your human self? Are you living in your truth? Because truth can't be taught. There's really no way to teach it. It is something beyond words. It is a pure transmission of consciousness, and truth has this kind of open honesty, and it stands strong against the fires of chaos and destruction. So truth provokes a longing within another that allows that person to grow beyond what they know and into the potential within their own soul. You gain strength from having hope and from using that hope to move past your human indulgences, disappointments, and neediness to move into the higher vibrations of your potential. So this month, I would love everybody to kind of take a look at the places that you think you've healed, but maybe that you've created a shell around, and because that vulnerability was penetrated and damaged, you created a shield around something, but nobody gets to know you or really relate to you because they're relating to your shell. So, one of the things I like to say is that people are attracted to who you're pretending to be. That doesn't necessarily mean that's who you really are. And that to me is the big piece. It's a huge piece to kind of shift the energy and move forward. So I think I might have said something wrong at the beginning, that I said it was the North Node at the beginning. It was actually Chiron. Sorry about that. Just throwing that in there. I was like, wait a second. It's not the North Node. It's actually Chiron. So Chiron did a big shift. And that's, now pulling ahead and creating a pathway into a new zone. So thanks everybody for listening. I appreciate it. Talk to you later. Bye.